I used to think owning a movie theater was one of the simplest businesses I could buy. I would get a building, put movies on the screens, sell tickets, and keep whatever was left after expenses. That was roughly the idea in my head when I first found an old movie theater in Ohio. My name is Ethan Brooks, and I was looking for a business that felt real. I didn't want something completely digital or built around a trend that could disappear in a year. I wanted a place people could walk into, spend money, and hopefully keep coming back to. The theater seemed perfect. It had been operating for decades, but almost everything inside looked tired. The carpet was faded, the seats were uncomfortable, the lobby belonged to another generation. Some projection equipment was outdated, the bathrooms needed work, and the building had clearly survived years of cheap repairs. But I didn't see an old theater. I saw what it could become. I imagined modern auditoriums, larger screens, digital projectors, better sound, reclining seats, a brighter lobby, premium screenings, and a concession area that felt like part of the entertainment. On paper, it looked like a classic turnaround. Buy an outdated business, improve the product, attract more customers, and make the numbers work. Then I started calculating what improve the product actually meant. The building itself was only the first decision. If I bought the property, I would need a large amount of capital immediately, and that money would be locked into real estate before I sold a single ticket. If I leased it instead, I could reduce the upfront cost, but I would create a large fixed payment every month, whether the theater was full or nearly empty. Neither option was cheap. Then came renovation. I needed to repair auditoriums, replace flooring, update electrical systems, improve lighting, renovate bathrooms, modernize the lobby, fix damaged walls, upgrade fire and safety systems, and make sure the building could handle modern equipment. And that still didn't include the equipment that actually makes a theater a theater. Every auditorium needed a screen, projector, sound system, seating, emergency lighting, control equipment, and regular maintenance. A projector failure isn't like a broken lamp in a restaurant. If the projector stops working, the product disappears. I can have a full room, employees ready, popcorn made, and tickets sold, but without the projector, I have nothing to show. Then I looked at the seats. A few chairs didn't sound expensive until I multiplied the cost by hundreds. The same thing happened with speakers, signs, cameras, point-of-sale systems, kitchen equipment, and air conditioning. Every individual expense looked manageable. Together, they became enormous. That was the moment my original idea changed. I wasn't buying an old theater and cleaning it up. I was committing a huge amount of money before I had proof that the new version of the business would work. And almost all of that money had to be spent before opening night. That is what makes this business uncomfortable. Many businesses can test demand on a small scale. I can start an online store with limited inventory or launch a service business with one employee and expand only when customers arrive. A movie theater gives me much less flexibility. Customers expect the experience to be finished when they walk in. The building, equipment, safety systems, staff, and areas must be ready before I compete. That meant I could spend heavily, build auditoriums, and still have no guarantee people would come. I could control the seats, sound, service, and cleanliness. I could not control whether the movies were strong enough to fill them, so that was the first contradiction. I wasn't simply buying a theater. I was making an expensive bet on attendance. Then I discovered the next problem. Even when customers bought tickets, most of that ticket money wasn't really mine. The first time I looked at ticket sales, I assumed that was where the business would live or die. It seemed obvious. If I sold enough seats, I would make money. If I didn't, I wouldn't. Then I learned how the ticket split actually works. A customer might pay $18 to watch a movie in my theater, but that entire $14 does not stay with me. A significant share goes back to the studio and distributor, especially during the opening weeks of a major release. That completely changed the way I thought about every person walking through the door. The ticket gets the customer inside. The real opportunity begins after that. I studied Michael Carter's theater in Texas, where a typical customer might buy an $18 ticket and then spend another $9 to $18 on popcorn, drinks, candy, or upgraded food. That sounded strange until I looked at the margins. The studio shares in ticket revenue. It does not take the same cut from the popcorn I sell, the fountain drink, the candy, the premium seat upgrade, or the local advertisement playing before the trailers. That meant two people watching the same movie could have completely different financial value to me. That was my first major expectation reversal. I thought the screen was the product. In reality, the screen was partly the reason people entered the building. The building itself had to become the business. Once I understood that, I started redesigning the theater around spending per visitor instead of ticket sales alone. The concession stand suddenly mattered almost as much as the auditoriums. I needed customers to see it immediately and buy quickly. A slow concession line could send dozens of people into their movie without buying anything. Popcorn worked because customers already connected it with movies, while drinks and candy were simple to sell at scale. Then there were premium options. Better seats could justify higher prices. VIP auditoriums could create a more expensive experience. Private screenings could turn quiet hours into paid events. Local businesses could buy advertising before the movie started. I wasn't looking at one revenue stream. I was looking at several. That mattered because attendance could swing dramatically from one movie to another. If I depended only on tickets, every week release would hit me directly. Higher spending per visitor gave me another lever. I started with a simple example. Suppose 500 customers came through the theater in one evening. If each person bought only an $18 ticket, the theater would record $9,000 in ticket sales. That sounds impressive, but a large portion would eventually leave the business through the studio and distributor split. Now imagine those same 500 customers spent an average of $10 each at concessions. That adds $5,000 in revenue. If the average rose to $15, that became $7,500. Nothing changed about the number of seats sold. The difference came from what happened between the front door and the auditorium. That was when I understood why average customer spending mattered so much. Attendance alone did not tell me whether the night was financially strong. A packed theater full of customers who buy nothing except tickets can be less valuable than a smaller crowd spending heavily on food, drinks, premium experiences, and extras. And that created a strange reality. The movie is the reason people come. But the movie is not always where I make the best money. I stopped asking only how many tickets I needed to sell. I started asking a better question. How much could I earn from each visitor while still making the experience feel worth returning for? Because if I got that number wrong, even a busy theater could struggle. And if I got it right, one customer could be worth far more than the price printed on the ticket. But there was another problem waiting for me. Even on nights when almost nobody showed up, most of my costs would still arrive exactly on schedule. Once I understood that concessions mattered more than I expected, I thought I had finally found the lever that could make the theater work. Then Monday night arrived in my financial model. 5 customers, 5 people spread across several auditoriums inside a building designed for hundreds. The problem was that almost none of my major expenses cared. The rent or loan payment did not shrink because the lobby was empty. Electricity still powered screens, projectors, lights, refrigerators, ticket systems, and signs. Air conditioning still had to cool enormous rooms even if only a handful of seats were occupied. Employees still had to be there. Someone had to sell tickets, prepare food, clean auditoriums, check bathrooms, manage the building, and fix problems. That was when I started seeing the theater differently. A busy Saturday night looked like an entertainment business. A quiet Monday looked like a machine consuming cash. The building had to stay ready whether customers came or not. If attendance fell by 50%, my rent did not fall by 50%. My insurance did not fall by 50%. My maintenance contracts did not fall by 50%. I could not simply switch off half the building. That meant every empty seat mattered twice. First, I lost the ticket and concession revenue I expected from that person. Second, I still carried almost the same operating cost. Then I started adding the expenses that were less predictable. A projector could fail before a major premiere. If that happened, I could lose an auditorium during one of the most valuable weekends of the year, issue refunds, and lose concession sales. The air conditioning system worried me even more. A theater is a collection of large rooms filled with people and hot equipment. If the cooling system failed during an Ohio summer, I could not pretend everything was fine. I might have to close screens until it was fixed, and repairs on commercial systems are rarely small. Then came cleaning. Popcorn gets everywhere. Drinks spill. Bathrooms need constant attention. Seats get damaged, carpets wear down, trash accumulates after every screening. None felt dramatic. Together, they became a permanent drain on cash. I ran another simple example. Suppose the theater had a strong Saturday and generated $20,000 in total revenue from tickets, food, drinks, and upgrades. That looked fantastic. But the mistake would be treating that $20,000 like profit. Part of the ticket revenue still had to go to studios and distributors. Food had ingredient costs. Employees had wages. Card payments had processing fees. Utilities, rent, insurance, cleaning, maintenance, and taxes still sat underneath everything. A theater can look crowded and still produce a disappointing bottom line. That was my second major expectation reversal. High revenue did not mean high profit. And one bad week could erase part of a good month. Some bad weeks could arrive without warning. I could plan staffing. I could negotiate supply prices. I could maintain equipment. But I could not manufacture a blockbuster. If a highly anticipated movie opened and almost nobody cared, I would still have scheduled employees, cooled the auditoriums, powered the equipment, and prepared inventory for crowds that never came. I saw why cash reserves mattered. The business needed enough money not only to open, but to survive small weeks, repairs, seasonal changes, and surprises. Spending every available dollar on the renovation would make the building prettier and the company weaker. I needed working capital sitting in the bank for the moments when the theater failed to behave like the spreadsheet. Because the most dangerous expense was not the one I could predict. It was the one that arrived when attendance was already weak. And even if I managed every operating cost perfectly, there was still one risk I could not control at all: the movies themselves. By this point, I understood the costs inside the building. What worried me more were the risks outside it. I could renovate the theater perfectly, train the staff, improve the food, keep everything clean, and still have a terrible month because the movies themselves were weak. That was uncomfortable because I had almost no control over what brought people through the doors. If 3 major releases worked, attendance could surge. If those same releases disappointed, my lobby could stay quiet. I didn't decide whether audiences loved the next action movie, comedy, sequel, or animated film. I lived with the result. That meant part of my revenue depended on decisions made by studios away. Release dates mattered too. A studio could postpone a major premiere that I expected to carry an important month. My payroll would still exist. My rent would still exist. My utilities, maintenance, insurance, and debt payments would still exist. The customers I expected would not. That was dangerous with high fixed costs. Then there was streaming. Customers had more options. A large television, good speakers, streaming subscriptions, and food at home could create a decent movie night without buying tickets or driving across town. I could not compete with that by pretending nothing had changed. The question was no longer whether people liked movies. The question was whether they had enough reason to watch them inside my building. I found a useful example outside Denver. A small theater there had survived for years with a loyal audience. Then a large entertainment complex opened nearby. The new competitor had more screens, newer seats, more food, and a bigger marketing budget. Customers started drifting away. The obvious response would have been to lower ticket prices, but that created another problem. If margins were already tight, cheaper tickets could increase attendance while making each visitor less profitable. So the theater tried something different. It started giving customers reasons to visit that the larger multiplex did not offer. There were themed screenings, classic movies, private auditorium rentals, and special events. Instead of competing only on the newest blockbuster, the theater began competing on experience. That mattered to me. If I depended completely on whatever Hollywood released next Friday, I was not really controlling my own demand. I was renting demand from the studios. The Denver example showed me how to reduce it. A classic movie night could fill seats during a weak release period. A private rental could make money when an auditorium would otherwise sit empty. A birthday event, company presentation, or themed evening could turn unused capacity into something customers would pay for. The screen did not have to show only new movies. The auditorium itself was an asset. That became another expectation reversal. At first, I thought extra services would distract from the core business. Now I realized they could protect it. Diversification was about reducing the number of ways one bad movie season could hurt me. Of course, none of these ideas guaranteed success. Special events needed marketing, private rentals needed customers, classic films could still play to nearly empty rooms, competition could still push prices down, and streaming could still make staying home easier. But these were variables I could influence. I could not control what studios released. I could control what happened inside my building when those releases were not enough. That changed things. I stopped thinking of the theater as a place that sold access to movies. I started thinking of it as an entertainment property with several ways to monetize the same visit. That made the business look more resilient. But resilience was not the same thing as strong profitability. For that, I needed to understand what the best theaters did differently when everything was working. By now, I had stopped thinking about the theater as a place that simply sold movie tickets. The strongest version of the business looked different. It was a system designed to earn more from every customer, every room, and every hour the building was open. That was where profitability started to make sense. A modern multiplex could make money from tickets, but tickets were only the beginning. The customer might arrive for a movie, then buy popcorn, a drink, candy, or a full meal. They might pay extra for a larger seat, a premium auditorium, or a better format. A company could rent an auditorium during the day for a presentation. A restaurant or bar attached to the theater could keep customers spending before and after the film. The point was making the same building produce revenue in more than one way. I ran the numbers again. Suppose 1,000 people visited during a strong weekend. If the average customer spent $18 on a ticket and nothing else, the theater would record $18,000 in ticket revenue. But I would not keep all of it. Now suppose those same customers spent another $12 each on food, drinks, upgrades, games, or premium seating. That adds another $12,000 in revenue without adding a single extra visitor. The economics changed completely. I did not just need more people, I needed stronger revenue per person. If everything inside the theater felt overpriced, customers would notice. A family that felt punished every time they bought popcorn or a drink might decide that the next movie was better watched at home. So the goal was not to charge the maximum possible amount. It was to create enough value that customers were willing to spend more and still wanted to return. Premium formats made the same point. An IMAX-style experience, upgraded sound, luxury seating, or a VIP room could justify a higher price because the customer was not buying the same experience they could get from a normal screen. The theater became more profitable when the upgrade felt real, not when I simply raised the price. Then I looked at the difference between a weak theater and a strong one. The weak version depended heavily on blockbuster releases and earned little beyond the ticket. The strong version had several reasons for customers to visit and several ways to earn money once they arrived. That was the final expectation reversal for me. I had started this project believing that success depended on selling as many movie tickets as possible. By the end, I understood that a full auditorium could still be a weak business if customer spending was low and costs were uncontrolled. At the same time, a theater with fewer visitors could perform better if those visitors bought premium experiences, food, drinks, rentals, and other services at healthy margins. So what determined whether I succeeded or failed? 3 numbers mattered most: attendance, average spending per visitor, and the cost of keeping the building operating. If attendance was weak, I needed events, rentals, better programming, or stronger marketing. If customer spending was weak, I needed better concessions, premium products, or a more valuable experience. If costs were too high, no amount of impressive revenue would save me for long. Owning a movie theater was not a simple bet on movies. It was a bet on whether I could turn a large, expensive building into an entertainment business that earned money from the moment a customer walked through the door until the moment they left. The screen brought them in. Everything around the screen determined whether the business survived. So if I ever bought that old theater in Ohio, I knew what I would watch first, not the box office, the entire customer journey. Because the owners who win in this business are not just selling movies. They are building reasons to come back, spend again, and make every occupied seat worth more than the ticket attached to it. That mattered. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like it, subscribe to the channel, and check out the other videos for more stories about